I am a huge fan of both David Bowie and Leonard Cohen, have been since my teens. In fact, I got Leonard Cohen's autograph the first time I saw him back in 1975. And I think both their records are great, but they're both dominated by impending death, and I don't think that a record about that can be my favourite album of the year. I wanted something more life-affirming, and it was a close call. I loved Steve Mason's Meet the Humans. I saw him at Rough Trade, I think back in about February, previewing songs from it. But the album that I most enjoyed this year was by a band who I've loved for more than 20 years, who I saw 2 weeks ago at Rock City playing a career-spanning set that was absolutely brilliant. They're called Teenage Fan Club. They consist of 3 singer-songwriters who also do fantastic harmonies. They follow on a tradition from the Beatles and the Byrds and Big Star, and I think it's their best album in donkey's years, and stone cold classic. My album of the year, and I got an advanced signed copy, that's how much I like them, is Here by Teenage Fan Club.
Okay. Well, it's absolutely fabulous that women's voices are dominating poetry. I think it's absolutely brilliant, being a woman myself. And I think one of my favourite female poets has to be Warsan Shah. I think she's absolutely fantastic. And in particular her collection, Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth. And there's a particular poem in that collection that I really like, and I actually read to my own daughter. The title of it is When the Men Come. And I mean, what do? You run! Is that the advice you give to your daughters? So yeah, I just think she's a really new voice on the scene, really great. She reminds me of Chimamanda Adichie to some extent. Her poetry it's just crystal clear, full of imagery. It's just absolutely fantastic. So I would have to say, for me, the woman that I consider to be a voice of poetry right now would be Warsan Shah.
Without question, it was The Embrace of the Serpent, which was a film from Colombia, South America. And it may well have been one of the very first feature films that ever came out of Colombia by a director I'd never previously heard of, called Sierra Guerra. But what was so amazing about this film, it was beautifully photographed in widescreen but in black and white. And it was about based on truth, but fictionalized, based on true life Amazonian travelers from the West, one in the very early part of the 20th century and one in the post-war period. And the fictionalized aspect was that the native guide was the same person when he was young and then when he was old. And that sort of fictionalized trope told you an enormous lot about contact with the native peoples of the Amazon at that time. It's a truly extraordinary film.
I'm glad you've asked me that. My favourite award-winning book of the year was The Sellout by Paul Beatty. But I loved it before it won the Booker Prize, so it's not just because it won. It's the kind of the book that, as you're reading it, you almost feel, he shouldn't be allowed to write this, or where's he going with this? And it's absolutely wonderful, like nothing I've ever read before. It's set in America, and it's the idea behind it is somebody who thinks that he will reinstate segregation and slavery, and that's the best way to empower the young black person. And you're kind of screaming, you can't say that, but you can. And he says it so well. And he won the prize just before the presidential elections, and you almost feel that he kind of knew that the world was going to go mad. And it's just an extraordinary book from the very first page, which is kind of embarrassing almost, because it's just so much that's shocking. It uses words that we just don't say, and we say them. And I read them aloud in a library, and I was really proud to be saying them. So I think that's a book that will change us and change how we think about novels and how we think about the world, particularly America, and how we think about race and satire too. I mean, it's a satire, but it's very funny. It's very tragic. It's just beautiful.
My favourite piece this year has been Hare and Tortoise, which we produced in the Neville Studio this year. It was written and produced in Nottingham. It's a piece for very small children, and watching it was really great fun because you're sitting in amongst a group of people who are no older than 6, and some of them are as young as 3, having the best time and feeling yourself carried away by their enthusiasm for hearing a great story told in a really good way. And Hare and Tortoise is quite a traditional tale, but the way it was staged, it managed to be traditional and also good fun and also contemporary. And I just had the best hour and 5 minutes. It was fantastic. And I think it's really good for everybody to go back and be a kid again for an hour or so.
I've actually got a number of books for family members this year. I've got my husband Bryan Cranston's autobiography, A Life in Parts, because we've enjoyed him in so many films and Breaking Bad, of course, on TV. So I thought that would be a great read for him. And for my sister, I've got Sophie Hannah's Little Face, which is the first book in a series and exactly the sort of thing that she loves to read. And I'll be borrowing both of those back from them when they've read them. And a couple of other books that I've read and really enjoyed this year that I'll be thinking about who I can buy those for are Will Menmuir's The Many, which was longlisted for the Man Booker Prize this year. And I've just discovered Anita Bruckner and read one of her novels, Hotel du Lac. Absolutely loved it, and have now bought more of her novels because I absolutely love her style.
First thing I'd say about television drama is that I honestly don't watch a great deal of it. But having said that, the 2 things that really struck me this year were NW, based on Zadie Smith's novel, and National Treasure, which took on the issue of child abuse, in particular the possibilities of child abuse involving famous people involved in broadcasting, people in the national spotlight. Why did I like them both? I liked them both because they dealt with real issues. I liked them both because they had something to say about the society we live in, and they said it really well and really clearly, and with terrific performances which were very believable in both cases.
Special. Okay, so my favourite film this year was Summertime, which I think was actually released, might have been released last year, but it's a French film, released in Europe, only over here this year, which I saw at the Broadway, and it's just the most beautiful, clever film about a young woman who works on a farm in northern France, set in the 70s, a very kind of tough existence, and she is a lesbian and falls in love with a local girl, and the local girl spurns her, so she moves to Paris, and then she's in Paris at the height of the sort of feminist revolution. And it was fantastically well written, and it was brilliantly atmospheric. It was Cécile de France was in it. It was amazing acting, and it was the most wonderful antidote to Blue is the Warmest Colour.
My favourite book of 2016 was The Lesser Bohemians by McBride. I thought it was just an astonishing coming-of-age novel set in London in the 1980s, and I found it unputdownable.
I wouldn't normally say this, but this year I give the award to the Nottingham Playhouse pantomime. It's just a staggeringly fascinating form. There's so many kind of different components come together that shouldn't be there. During the perestroika thing in Russia, Trent University Theatre Design Department, and I was kind of associated with it, got over 3 directors from the Moscow Arts Theatre who'd basically come over in order to do shopping for Christmas or birthday or whatever. And we took them to the pantomime. These guys were experts in world theatre. And we took days trying to explain to them what on earth could conceivably be happening. Why is the leading woman a man dressed up in a funny hat? Why is another woman slapping her thighs and saying she's a man? Why do they suddenly teach everybody a song in the middle of it? What's these things that they keep putting in their face? Now we tried desperately to make some sense of it, and the beauty of course of it is there ultimately isn't any. There's cows that need milking, there are geese, it's surreal before surrealism really.
As a passionate reader, I couldn't possibly pick one favourite book of 2016. There have been so many brilliant books published this year, so I'm sharing my top 5 picks that I'd highly recommend you read. Starting with The Good Immigrant by Nikesh Shukla, 21 diverse and exciting British voices that award-winning author Nikesh Shukla has gathered to confront the issues of identity, immigration, of tokenism and representation. It's an important book of our time. Swing Time by Zadie Smith. She is a personal heroine of mine, so she really can do no wrong. It's a beautiful exploration of identity, race, family and culture. My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout. It's a small but perfectly formed read. This short novel is a window into the life of the average yet extraordinary Lucy Barton. It's a novel that deeply explores the often tangled, frayed and stretched thread that forever binds mothers and daughters. The Vegetarian by Han Kang and brilliantly translated by Deborah Smith. It's a hauntingly beautiful book, and the poetry and translation both push language into new forms, so much so that I'm still thinking about the gorgeous and settling imagery of the painted bloom and the tinned peach. The Trouble with Goats and Sheep is a marvellous and surprisingly dark book set in the hot summer of 1976, and it's all about belonging and friendship.